Hey everyone, thanks for joining Chandra and myself on our first long form video. People have been requesting it.
And we've known each other for so long, and whenever we're working together, we get into conversations, and we kind of figured we're already doing videos. Why not try to catch some of that conversation and let folks see what it's like to kind of be here with us.
Right. Try to make it as unscripted and natural as possible. So I'm Kylie. I am the owner of Games Unlimited, chief gaming officer, maybe. I don't know. What's my name on Discord?
Oh, you're the dungeon lord or something.
The GU,
like that?
the Games Unlimited dungeon lord.
Yeah, something like that.
And you are Chandra.
I am one of the managers here. I think the longest running employee currently. And yeah, I've been a customer of Games Unlimited since I was like 12 years old or something. So I've got a lot of history with the store, even apart from working here.
Right. Actually, fun fact, Chandra actually was such a good salesperson when I first came into Games Unlimited that, you sold me Carcassonne.
Yeah.
And then he was such a good salesperson that I just bought the whole store.
That's pretty much how it went.
And yeah, you are, I suppose, I don't know, do you actually have technically longer employment at Games Unlimited than me, despite me owning it?
I think it depends, because I did have a gap in there for, 2 years maybe? Something like that, because I started working here in 2008. Back at the old Tiny Cave location with Bob, the original owner, and Jim, the manager at the time. And if you've been a long-time customer at Games Unlimited, you may have met Amiri, who actually worked for us part-time even fairly recently. But he was with the store before I was back then.
Yeah. So if you worked from 2008 till when did you take the break?
I think 2010.
Okay.
And then I came back in some point in 2012 or 2013 maybe, doing very part-time because I was doing other stuff at the time. So I was, I think, doing once a week and fill-in shifts at that time.
Because I think I started working in 2012.
That sounds right.
And then I purchased the store in 2015. But if you were working in 2012 and I was working in 2012.
Well, yeah.
Did you take another break after 2012? I know you were very part-time, but.
I don't remember, actually. It's all kind of blurring together at this point because I've worked at several places in the neighborhood.
Right.
So yeah, it's all blurring. And I know for a while there, I was working at a place south of the city, but I was still doing Monday shifts here for a while. I don't remember what years those all were.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know. I think probably just in a time frame of years, you might have me beat. Because if I started in 2012, I've basically got now, 12 years?
That's possible. Although I think at this point, you probably have more hours of gaming under your belt than I manage anymore.
Well, and I definitely have more hours of stress about the store.
Yeah.
Than you do. Though, making you a manager is not giving you the stress, taking some of the stress off.
Yeah, well, we tried. Dan and I, we feel a sense of, ownership over how the store is doing and over the community that the store has building up around it. So I think, that helps take a lot of stress off whenever you're, whenever you have multiple people who really care about what's going on, and all the other staff cares also. And you see it every day with people here kind of stepping up to throw their own personality and their own creativity at whatever situations we're trying to deal with at the time, whether it's a problem or just a day-to-day thing we want to improve or whatever.
Right. I got to say, it's very strange, to go from, when I first took over the store, I was working 5 days a week, 11 to 7, that's when we're open. Yep. So, I was here for 5/7 of the time the store was open.
Yeah.
And then there were a couple of days where we had some part-timers, and you were one of them just working in, but nothing happened at the store that I pretty much didn't directly do.
Yeah.
And now I like literally walk in every day and I go over to the new release shelf and I'm like, what the heck is that game?
Right. Well, like back in the day, we had, when I was working more hours, we had a lot of overlap. And you and I would do all of the unboxing of restocks and new releases, and we were doing them live on Facebook, I think it was.
I remember that.
And we had a lot of people who liked to tune in, mostly locals, but not entirely. We had folks from elsewhere who liked to tune in and see what we were pulling out of the box. And it got pretty theatrical for a while. We would have like guests walking on and things
My
like
kids
that.
playing with the bubble wrap. And getting I remember getting like a phone call, like literally Facebook Live unboxing something. And like the phone rings. Hey, can you set aside a copy of that game?
Yeah.
We're filming here now, but sure.
It almost feels like the prototype of our like TikTok videos and things like that, because it was our first time. Like, let's just put ourselves on screen and see how it goes.
See what happens.
But yeah, like that shows how you used to be. I mean, you're still kind of the face of the store for a lot of people, but you used to be out front all the time.
Right.
And now like everything has expanded and all that. So there's a lot more behind the scenes stuff that needs to be done now than there used to be. But you still love your time on the floor when you get it.
And it's one of the reasons why I've dove so much into like the TikTok stuff. It's like, well, I don't necessarily get to spend 8 hours a day on the floor, but I can like spend a few hours a week doing fun stuff to show people and
Well, and we're also still gaming though.
Oh
right?
yeah, absolutely.
Both of us still play games. I run a lot of RPGs. Hopefully we'll be playing in some soon.
Are you the RPG guru on the Discord?
Yeah, that's me apparently. But yeah, and Kylie, you still get as many board games of various sorts, board games and card games and so on. And you just played Voidfall?
I did. This was
that's huge.
It is a huge game. I'm not Mind Clash games, right? They do these huge big productions. I think I played the one Anachrony. I played that with Andrew, a former employee of ours.
The big like mech minis
you
load your workers into.
And their time travel. And Mind Clash is one of those companies that they have a following, right? Much like Stonemaier
or
Splotter, like people who know that company, they're going to get every game that come out.
Yeah.
And so I remember when Voidfall came out, we had copies on the shelf. We sold some, and it was billed as like an Eclipse killer. Yeah. And I love Eclipse. Mm-hmm. Like I'm very much with people who are like Twilight Imperium versus Eclipse. I'm much more in the Eclipse. I like the Euro-y nature of it. It does have combat and stuff, but I like that you can like fight against the NPCs. And big fan of Eclipse. They're like, well, this is like Eclipse. But everyone was talking about how hard it was to learn. I'm like, I can just play Eclipse. I don't need this game. But as happens with all of our used games, half of the games in our demo library were formerly used games that I decided to put in the demo library.
We put dibs notes sometimes. And like a lot of those dibs notes on the used games that come in are just, we want this as a stored demo. It's not any given one of us is going to own it. It's just, we want to have this around.
Yeah, this needs to be in the library. And that's the thing, like I put things in there saying like, I want to play this someday. I don't know when the day is.
Yeah, the demo library is almost like wish casting for us. Yeah,
it's really true. But yeah, I came in one day and behind the counter was the Kickstarter big galactic edition of Voidfall, and I was like, did that come in used? I would like to play this someday. But it was one of those like, okay, I hear it's difficult to learn. There's like literally videos on how to choose the right videos to learn the game.
Right.
I was like, okay, this is complex, but what the heck? Like one of the things I love just reading rule books.
Yeah.
And a well-written rule book is fantastic. And so I took one of the 4 rule books home, 2 of the 4 rule books home, and like I spent an evening, spent like an hour and a half reading about how the tutorial works, or the first phase of the tutorial works. I'm like, okay, I get this. but since I got one of our new gaming tables at home,
Yeah.
which I had fully planned on using so that like my kids can do their Legos on the inside part, and then we can put the top on to cover up the mess and play games. No. I'm like, well, I can set up a game like Voidfall and just have it there and pick at it. And I did.
Do the miniatures fit under
Yeah.
the? Okay.
Yeah, and this
That's
one, I've learning about gaming tables that the depth of the table is called the vault height.
Right.
And people have very strong opinions
I'm
about
sure.
vault height.
Some people want them more shallow.
Right,
some
right,
want
right.
them super deep.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And especially if you're playing and leaving set up like miniatures heavy games. Like I couldn't leave Cthulhu Death May Die set up.
Absolutely
right?
not.
You'd have to although that one I think it's really just like the big boss.
Some of those big bosses wouldn't even fit under there, tipped over on their side because they're big in all dimensions.
Yeah. So but you could, I suppose you could okay, well, take that off, put a marker where it is. But Voidfall doesn't have anything that's too big, so they all fit and stayed under there. But anyway, over basically the game plays over three rounds, if you will. And so I played around one evening, I played around the following morning, and then this morning I finished the third round of the tutorial. And
do you know about how long that took you if you stacked it all together?
Well, so like I said, there was between an hour and an hour and a half of reading the rule book without, I didn't even have the game at home at that point. Setting it up probably took 30 to 45 minutes, not as long as people say, but again, I was setting up the tutorial.
Okay. Yeah.
And then, that first round probably was an hour and 15 minutes. This is just solo, me playing solo. Mm-hmm. And then the second and third rounds were maybe half an hour each. I knew what was going on.
Yeah. That's really not bad. I mean, it sounds like once you sort of got into the groove, it sped up.
Well, and I will say the thing that I really appreciate, and I know this is the art and graphic design is done by Ian O'Toole, who's really well known for doing the Lacerda games. And people love those too. And I haven't played a lot of Lacerda games. I get it with this game because as complex as it is, and then people say, well, it's really not that complex, it's the strategy. People are going to say all sorts of things. Yeah. But what I can say is this. After having gone through and played it once, I could just look at the iconography. There's a whole game flow that's written in there. It looks like it's overwhelming when you don't know how to translate it.
Yeah.
But learning the language, which didn't take much, it's really clear and really beautiful how it's all done.
Okay.
So I can say that for at this point, I've referenced the rule book, but it's to make sure I'm doing it right. But nope, that symbol means exactly what I thought it means.
Okay, yeah. I mean, clear iconography is a big deal. Can't think of any off the top of my head right now, but I've played some games in the past where the iconography got in the way of playing the game.
And I think what Ian O'Toole is trying to do is not just make the iconography clear, make the iconography art in its own right.
Yeah.
And this
that makes it more memorable.
Yeah,
if it makes it way easier to attach meaning to a symbol when the symbol itself is interesting to look at.
Yeah. Sure. So that was Voidfall. Hopefully I'll get a multiplayer game of it at some point, but it's definitely, I would need to run someone through the tutorial. Just because I know the game now and I could probably teach it, it's much easier to do it sort of piecemeal that way.
Right. Yeah, I mean, a lot of big games like that tend to benefit from having someone to teach you, but also teaching it. You know, it's that classic thing of you don't really know something until you've taught it to someone else, and games are huge for that.
Yeah.
Your first time teaching it to someone, you're going to know it way better after that than you did going in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about you? Have you played anything recently?
I've been playing small stuff mostly, other than RPGs, of course. I've been playing.
Sometimes those are small.
Yeah,
but
sometimes they are.
Although I guess a small RPG is the time commitment of a long game.
Yeah,
so usually
for sure.
at least 2 hours.
Even a one shot for me is usually a 4 hour, 3 or 4 hour thing, because you want to get a satisfying arc of some sort in there. Even if it ends on a cliffhanger or whatever, there has to be enough that happened that people feel their time was spent in an interesting way.
And I will say this, Having just witnessed my oldest, my 10-year-old, playing D&D for the first time.
Okay.
I have played some RPGs with my kids. We did Venture Society, No Thank You Evil,
Was
a couple
that
other little things.
Dan B.
That was
running
Dan.
that?
Dan B
Yeah,
was
one
running
of
it.
our-
He's one of our staff members.
Yeah, who's also a longtime friend for both of us, even before he worked here.
Longtime customer of the store. But he ran it, but one of the things I noticed, because I wasn't playing, I was just sort of overseeing and listening. RPGs you mentioned, like probably a minimum of 4 hours.
Yeah.
Unlike with a board game, or at least how to phrase this, an RPG is going to have so much socializing and BSing and comic stuff that is expected and needed.
Yeah.
Whereas too much of that happening when you're trying to play a board game
is annoying.
Yeah.
Well, like too much of it happening in an RPG is disruptive too. But I think most people, when they've played for a little while, get a sense of like, okay, we need to buckle down for this.
Right.
And of course, different tables come up with different ways of aiding that along. At my table, Dan M, who is our dice guru on Discord.
The other manager.
So he plays in every RPG I run. I insist on having him there. I practically won't run a game anymore without him. He is the guy who will take notes the whole time and is quiet most of the time, but is more than willing to step in and be like, okay, guys, we're wasting time. We got to go over here.
Right. Keep you on track.
Yeah, well, keep the other players on track, right? Because he's thinking in terms of the game world, which is great. So, he's somewhat immersed in the fiction, and he understands, like, the longer we stand around here and gab and make jokes, the more we're letting, the villain or whomever have the run of things behind the scenes.
Right.
So, like, we need to get on the ball here. So it's useful having someone like that at your table. In old school gaming, you would have the party nominate a party caller. And whenever they're in their sort of exploration and investigation phases, outside of things like combat or socializing or whatever, that person is the one who, like, hears all the input from the other players, but then makes the final, looks at the GM and says, we're going south. We need to make it to the tower before nightfall,
It's like the whoever the start player, lead player is in a co-op game. They get the final call. We all can discuss, but they decide.
Exactly. And it's not like they're not the boss. And some groups will rotate being the caller or however they manage it. But, very few groups, I think, use that kind of system anymore. I recommend trying it, honestly, if you're new to RPGs or if you find that your players have a hard time self-organizing. That can be a genuine help. And again, it's not someone being bossy and rotate through it or whatever you find, but it's actually a really helpful thing to keep things moving. And someone can object and be like, well, my character isn't going to do that. Whatever, handle that however makes sense at your table. But having someone just say, okay, I've heard all the input, this is what we're doing, as a group can sort of make things, feel a bit more organized and feel like there's progress happening. But, in our case, Dan just kind of took this on of himself. It's just what he enjoys doing, and everyone trusts him to do it. So,
That's cool. I don't think I've ever actually played an RPG with Dan M.
Yeah,
I think
he's fun. He gets really into systems. He's not a min-maxer. I honestly hate min-maxing in tabletop RPGs. I just don't understand the fun of it. He's not a min-maxer at all, but he loves learning the systems so that he always knows what to do when, how to handle a situation at the table, and he always knows how to point other players to things. And again, as a GM, it takes a bit off of my plate. Because I don't need every player at my table to know the system we're playing. I, in fact, prefer if they come in for the first few sessions not knowing much about the system, just because then it makes it easier for them to care more about their character and the world and their interactions, and then they'll learn the system by seeing it in context. But having more than one person at the table who does know the system is great for, I'm the GM, I'm having to do a bunch of different things. So Dan or someone else at the table can be like, oh, talk to another player. Oh, you want to spend your experience points right now? Well, here's the table in the book on what things cost.
Yeah, you've got basically like an assistant or a deputy.
Yeah.
You don't have to stop everything to look up a rule.
Right, but a deputy who's just as invested in the world as I, the GM, am,
And that's important for you, because I know you are very system agnostic. It's not like I play Warhammer Fantasy and that's it. I mean, most of the time, something from IPR, Indie Press Revolution, where we get most of our indie RPGs, a box comes in and you will get an angry look on your face because you're like, dang it, I gotta buy this one, and I gotta buy this one, and I gotta buy this one.
Yeah.
What was the last one that you bought?
The last one that I bought, oh man. Troika was a while ago. Knave was a few weeks back now. I pick up so freaking many of these things that it's hard to keep track of what the last one even was.
Wow, sounding like a board gamer now.
Yeah, right? Luckily, they do take up less room on my shelves than board games. God, I don't know. I just keep going through and reading different ones. I'm not even sure what order in which they hit my shelves.
Well, what did you read recently? What was the last one you cracked open?
The last one I cracked open was Knave.
Okay.
Just because I've reread it probably 3 or 4 times since I got it now. And the nice thing is, the system itself is real quick. I mean, you can get through that book fast. But it's a ton of random tables, and I love random tables. This is a thing that everyone knows about me at this point, because they're just concentrated inspiration is what they are. I can use random tables from one game in any other game just to get unexpected ideas for that game. When you say that I'm system agnostic, I would go further and say I am actually very system passionate, but I'm like a polysystemist. I don't like the thought of sticking with one single system because there's no RPG system out there. There is no RPG system out there that does everything well.
But Chandra, is there an RPG system out there that does everything well?
There is no RPG system out there.
I thought that was 5e.
No. The thing is, any given system at best will support certain styles of gameplay really, really well. But that doesn't mean it supports every other style of gameplay, which is also why I'm real big on sort of kit bashing systems. I am running this big campaign of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and for the most part, the system does everything I need it to do for the kind of game I'm running. The system and the setting are married very well. You don't have to worry about a lot of gaps there. But if I do run into something that I think the system doesn't do well, I got no problems taking a solution from another system and grafting it on. And then my players and I will test that out over a few sessions and be like, okay, this works. And I think that's important in RPGs. They are open systems. My philosophy on this is that if you've got a board game that's an open system, it's a broken board game.
Right.
That means you're going to have to go on the BGG forums all the time or on Reddit and be like, oh my God, guys, how do you handle this situation? The rule book doesn't cover it. That's a broken game. Wasn't play tested enough, bad rule book, whatever the situation. With an RPG, if you run into situations the rule book doesn't cover, great. You are playing it right.
It's a feature, not a bug.
Yeah, exactly. And so you cannot have a system that simulates every single eventuality that your players are going to throw at you, or even that you want to throw at your players. And that is a feature. That's where the creativity gets in. That's where you get to play around with the systems and come up with interesting but fair solutions. something you can then have for later when a similar thing comes up, and your players have a sense of consistency there, but also a sense of ownership because you all figured that out together, that within the confines of this system and this world, this way of doing things makes sense.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I like that as a big difference between an RPG and a board game.
Yeah.
That one wants ambiguity and open systems, and the other absolutely doesn't need that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
sure.
because it's even in like a co-op game, a co-op board game, right? People want to know what the actual answer is. You know, and often people will come in on BGG. Sometimes they design themselves like, do whatever is most fun for you.
Yeah.
And that's just not satisfying because we want to know what the actual thing is. And of course, in a competitive game, you need that because one person's going to want it the way that benefits them. And
you couldn't imagine that happening at like a football game or a chess tournament.
Right.
You're never going to have like the NFL, like come on the microphone when a ref has has like an issue making a call and be like, do whatever seems fun. Like, you need to have something down that makes sense and makes everyone feel like this was a fair contest or a fair puzzle or whatever. But with an RPG, you need a sense of fairness to some extent, but you can't get too bogged down in issues of like game balance.
Right.
You need to be concerned more with keeping things moving, keeping things interesting, keeping people engaged.
Right.
And a lot of the time that means having to make stuff up on the fly. Make up what dice go where, make up which skill applies here, even though nothing in the rule book says it should.
Yeah.
But it makes sense,
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
We should probably wrap up.
Yeah.
But there's a couple things that we need moving forward. I don't know. We need a name for this. Maybe brainstorm. Maybe we can get some ideas from the people watching.
I mean, we literally just sat down to do this because we thought it would be fun. So,
yeah, exactly. Like unscripted. Although I was before we recorded, I was like, "Ooh, Chandra, let me tell you about Voidfall that I played last night." I was like, "Well, I can just wait and say it on camera. Don't waste that good energy." And I mean, we've got my sign off is unbox some fun. Said very poorly just then. I consider your sign off now the until we meet again.
How about roll some dice?
Roll some dice. That's right. Roll some dice and take some names. All right. Hopefully you enjoyed this. We'll do it again. It's fun for me. So as Chandra likes to say, I get paid to do this. We'll talk to you all next time.
See ya.